In October of 1874, on a cold night in the mill town of Merrivale, a young schoolteacher named Linda walked onto the covered bridge that crossed the river. Fog wrapped the timbers. The river moved in a slow, dark hush below. By morning, Linda did not return. People found her under the bridge with one boot missing, a silver locket clenched inside her hand, and a pocket watch beside her stopped at 2:17. Some townspeople called it an accident. Some whispered robbery. But the details did not sit right. A missing boot, a watch Linda never wore, a locket with a strand of pale hair that was not her own. These were not pieces of an accident. These were words from a story that someone tried to bury in cold water. Merrivale was a small town of smoke and cloth, owned more by the mill than by its citizens. The streets were cobblestone. The lamps burned oil. In winter, everyone listened for the river because the river was honest. It said what it was. The town did not always do the same. Linda lived in a small attic room on Laurel Street. She taught children their letters in the morning and their courage in the evenings. She believed that reading could pull a person out of a deep hole. She believed that numbers in a ledger could tell a truth that people would deny with their mouths. She did not think of herself as brave. She simply thought of herself as responsible. On the morning after her death, a young reporter named Noah Whitcomb stood by the body. He looked at the stopped watch. He looked at the mark on the casing, as if something hard had struck it. He noticed the raw skin on Linda's hand, where a splinter had driven in. He noticed the missing left boot, as if someone had pulled it off or it had come loose in a struggle. He said very little. He only wrote, and he kept writing. Back at the small newspaper office, Noah received a parcel addressed to him in careful teacher's handwriting. The postmark was late the previous night. The parcel held a wooden music box and a tiny brass key. Beneath the lining lay a note. If she did not return, he must use the key at the railway station. Locker number 12. Noah went straight to the station. Steam from a waiting train clouded the air. He opened locker 12 and found a worn leather ledger, a cheap scarf with red threads, and an envelope marked with the name Hargreave, the mill owner who bought influence as easily as he bought cotton. The ledger contained dates, payments, and names. Some entries were circled in Linda's hand. There was also a simple phrase, 2 lanterns, bridge. In Merrivale, 2 lanterns were a code. Smugglers and teamsters used that signal to say, "Come alone." The river did not only carry ice and driftwood, it carried cloth that left the mill yard at the wrong hour with the wrong paper. Noah followed the names. He visited Thomas Hale, the carpenter who was engaged to Linda. Thomas's hands were honest, but his eyes were raw from lack of sleep. He had asked Linda to leave Merrivale. She had refused because, in her words, there were girls who needed her. Thomas had walked her as far as Laurel Street, then turned away. He felt the weight of that turn like a stone in his pocket. Noah studied Linda's room and found an indentation in the desk blotter. Under the blotter, a faint message pressed into the paper said, "If I fail to return, look in the music box." The box in Noah's office was the first layer of that message. Perhaps there was more. At the schoolhouse, chalk dust still hung in the air. Linda's lesson list for the week included 4 words: emancipate, ledger, whistleblower, courage. In the map margin, she had sketched the covered bridge and marked a tiny X on a plank. That night, in rain, Noah went to the bridge. He tapped the boards until one sounded hollow. He lifted it and found a waxed packet tied with twine. Inside lay a page covered in dots and dashes. It was a code. It was her handwriting. She had found a way to hide numbers in a song. The river was loud. Footsteps echoed from the far end. A figure slipped through the fog with a red scarf at the throat. Noah killed his lantern and waited in darkness. The footsteps moved on. The river went back to its steady argument with the pilings. Noah held Linda's cipher and knew the story was larger than a single shove in the dark. The cipher mapped payments to foremen, bribes to a constable, and nighttime movements under the bridge. The last entry said, in plain words, "E knows. Sunday." Noah thought of names that began with E. He thought of a pale strand of hair in the locket. He went to the telegraph office. The telegraphist was Eve Carrow. Her fingers moved over the key like music. She had helped Linda post the parcel with the music box the night before. She admitted that Linda asked her about ciphers and about hiding dots in a melody. Eve said Linda looked afraid but steady. She also said that the wire sometimes sang names in the night. A teamster called Mac, a constable called Reed, and a lady called Eliza Hargreave. Noah asked about the red scarf. Eve said half the town wore one kind or another. Winter did not care about fashion. Winter wanted warmth. Noah went to the mill yard and met Mac Doyle, the teamster. Mac smelled of carbolic soap, the same smell the undertaker had noticed on Linda's dress. Carbolic could wash blood away. It could also erase ink. Noah did not accuse. He only watched and kept the smell in his notes. Noah went to the Hargreave mansion, where Eliza Hargreave poured tea with perfect hands and careful eyes. Eliza was not cold. She was protective. She said the town held itself together with order, and order had a price. Noah asked where she had been the last night. She did not answer. As he rose to leave, he noticed a mild scratch on her wrist. She covered it with lace. Outside, snow began to drift. The newspaper office burned that night. Flames licked the back door. Someone wanted the press to stop breathing. Noah, Eve, and Thomas fought the fire and saved enough to keep printing. In the ashes, Noah found nothing but the certainty that he was close to something people did not want seen. He returned to the stopped watch. He popped the back open with a thin blade. Inside, a repair mark listed the date and a name, R. Pike. Mrs. Pike's brother repaired watches and locks at the market. There was also a thin powder on the inside of the case that did not look like dust. It looked like lime. People used lime to mark timber for repair. The bridge had been worked on the week before. Whoever carried the watch had also carried the markings of that job. The watch did not belong to Linda. It belonged to someone who wanted to fix a time that made alibis possible. Noah and Eve made a plan. They would light 2 lanterns by the river at dawn. They would send wires to the county judge, to a Pinkerton agent, and to the churches to gather people. They would not chase men in alleys. They would call them into open mourning. At first light, the town gathered at both ends of the bridge. The wagon came the way it always came, drawn by habit. Mac walked beside it. The constable followed on foot. In the trees, a carriage waited. Eliza watched from the shadow of its door. Noah stepped forward and asked the constable to explain the watch, the blank ledger, and the missing boot. The constable smiled with tired eyes and placed his hand on his pistol. Thomas stood beside Noah. Eve held the music box up and wound it. The melody rose. Some notes were wrong in a way that meant they were right. Under the lid, tiny ink dots marked certain teeth. The letters spelled a name, Reed. Gasps moved through the crowd. Eliza stepped from the carriage and said she had asked Linda to meet her. She said she had come to beg silence, not to bring violence. She said she did not raise a hand. Noah believed part of this and doubted part of it. The constable raised his pistol. A Pinkerton man in the crowd told him to drop it. For a moment, Winter held its breath. Noah knelt by the bridge post and found a faint pencil mark in the wood. Linda had written in panic, "It is not the river that kills, it is the bridge." Noah understood. Linda knew the difference between a person and a system. She knew the bridge was not only wood, it was the structure that connected money to protection. It was the habit of making danger look like order. The county judge opened an inquiry. The mill denied knowledge. The constable kept his badge for a while longer. The ledger had been washed, clean with carbolic, and papers do not testify. The system does not step into a courtroom. It sits outside and waits. Noah went back to the office with the music box. He wound it again and felt something shift under his thumb. The box had a double lid. Under the false panel, a small daguerreotype plate hid. Noah held it to the lamp and watched the silver darken and brighten. The picture showed the covered bridge and 3 blurred figures in the fog. One was Linda. One was the constable. The third was short, wrapped in a red scarf. Noah looked closer. The small face was not Eliza. It was a boy, Eli, a 14-year-old who worked long hours at the mill and sometimes brought messages to the telegraph office. The red scarf was his sister's. He had worn it to keep out the cold. He had also used 2 lanterns to call for help. He had come to warn Linda. The constable had seen him and told him to run. The rest happened quickly and without mercy. The red scarf, which looked like a lady's mark in fog, turned into a child's signal flare when seen in silver. The story shifted again. Guilt moved like mist along the river. It touched many faces but settled on none of them long enough to become a single, simple truth. Thomas built a coffin for Linda and cried over wood in a way he had never cried over wood before. Eve stayed late at the wire, sending and receiving messages, tying the town to the world with a string no one could see but everyone could feel. Mrs. Pike left a ribbon at Linda's grave. Widow Mallory left a prayer. Eliza left nothing that anyone could find, but she stared at the river longer than a person stares at water when they are only thirsty. Noah printed what he had. He printed the watch. He printed the ledger that forgot. He printed the music box that remembered. He printed the hair in the locket and the hairpin from the planks. He printed the red scarf and then corrected it when the silver plates spoke a clearer word. He printed the line from the post, "It is not the river that kills, it is the bridge." People argued over breakfast. People whispered at church. Some said the constable was the hand. Some said the teamster was the muscle. Some said Eliza's fear reached out and pushed when words failed. Some said no person did it alone, and that was why no person would ever pay. Winter deepened. The river crusted at the edges. The bridge stood. The watch still pointed to 2:17, which was either the time a life ended or the time a lie began. The missing boot, when found in shallow water, held a scrap of paper with wet ink, "Not accident, not thief, I am not alone." Linda had used the last of her strength to refuse a lazy story. She would not let cold water erase her as if she had slipped on a stupid step. In the end, Merrivale had 2 endings. In one ending, the constable lost his badge, the teamster vanished on a freight train, and the judge swore the town would be clean. In the other, nothing official changed. People only looked at the bridge differently when they crossed it. They counted their breaths the way Linda taught them, and did not hurry the last one. Both endings are true, because both live in the way a town remembers and forgets. The law moves on paper, the system moves in habit. Courage moves in people who decide to keep asking, even when their breath fogs in the cold. If you stand by the river at dusk and listen, you may hear a soft ticking under the rush of water. It is not the watch. It is a question that refuses to die. Who held Linda? Who struck? Who planted the watch? Who washed the ledger? Who lit the lanterns? Who ran? Who told the truth too late? Who gave the order? Who obeyed? Who benefited? Who kept the bridge standing as if wood could be innocent all by itself? Linda's grave is small. The stone says only teacher. People leave hairpins there, like tiny flags that say we will not be silent. Some leave red thread. Some leave a splinter of wood from the bridge. Some leave nothing and stand quiet for a minute because silence can be respect or it can be fear, and they are still learning the difference. Noah keeps the music box on his desk. Sometimes he winds it, sometimes he does not. The melody is never quite in tune because it is carrying a second burden, the dots that spell a name. He keeps the silver plate wrapped in cloth. He visits Eli and brings bread. He speaks gently because guilt is heavy on a boy, even when the guilt is only for arriving late. Eve keeps the wire singing. She sends long messages and short ones. She teaches girls how to hold their backs straight at the key. She tells them what Linda told her. Courage is not loud. It is steady. It is the habit of showing up for the truth, even when your hands shake. Thomas works wood with a different tenderness now. He knows the weight of a coffin. He also knows the weight of a lid that closes on a story. He chooses, every day, not to close it all the way. Snow falls. The town softens. Spring will come and make the river quick again. The bridge will still stand. People will cross it with packages and laughter and sorrow. Some will count their breaths from one end to the other. Some will stop in the middle and look down. Some will touch the post where a faint sentence still hides in the grain, and they will feel the small rise of pencil under their fingers. They will know that a teacher once used her last minutes to write a lesson that no one should ignore. The unsolved murder of Linda lives in the questions we keep. It lives in the way we cross bridges. It lives in the way we decide what to believe when evidence is thin and power is thick. It lives in the tune of a broken music box and the mark of lime on a watch and the strand of hair in a locket and the truth a child brings too late. Maybe one day someone will open a trunk in an attic and find a page that did not burn. Maybe someone will speak in a warm kitchen and finally say the thing they have kept in their throat for years. Maybe the river will give up a secret. Maybe it already has, and we did not know how to listen. Until then, the story stands where Linda left it, on a bridge between what happened and what we can prove. The watch points to a time. The town points in many directions. The music box points to a name. The river points forward. The question points at us. Who killed Linda? If it was a person, we can name one. If it was a system, we have to change one. Either way, the bridge will remember which choice we make when we cross it,